remember looking at him going, I can't sell a car. He goes, sure you can. And I said, are you sure? And he said, can't, never, could do nothing, Lauren. And I said, all right. So I went out there and I sold a car, and it was a Jeep Grand Cherokee. It was white. I will never forget it.
Today, I'm joined by Lauren Wilson Reeves, General Manager of Wilson Kia. At just 35 years old, she's one of the youngest female GMs in the industry, bringing a fresh, results-driven perspective to dealership leadership. Her mission? To shine a spotlight on one of retail automotive's biggest untapped opportunities, empowering more women on the sales floor. A big thank you to our sponsors for making today's episode possible: Cox Automotive, Dealer DMV, and Nomad Content Studio. And now, let's get into the show. Lauren Wilson Reeves on the CDG podcast. Lauren, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me today.
Great to have you on. Where are you calling from? What state did you say you're in?
Brandon, Mississippi.
Nice. How's the car business down there?
It's going good. It's going good. We really like the summer months. It's real warm here.
Yeah, I bet. I've never been there. I'd love to explore one day, but now with and I know I read on your onboarding form, one of the things you noted, which I liked and I want to discuss, was you wrote it is possible to run a dealership and be a mom. So I'm going to want to ask you about that, but I find myself with travel with 3 kids, it's definitely gotten a lot more logistically difficult. So I don't know when I'll make it down there, but hopefully at some point.
Traveling with 3 kids is a whirlwind for sure. I saw something that said you're not going on vacation, you're just parenting in a different state. So
it's 100% true.
It's more difficult, no doubt.
I know. How's biz? And I should state you're GM, the general manager at Wilson Kia, 3rd gen dealer. Your father is dealer principal. Grandfather also had a dealership. How's biz in Wilson Kia in Mississippi?
Well, it's been good. Business has been good. This year has been really good. Last year was really good. June was a little iffy. June was a little different. They just changed all of our schooling around here. All of the public schools just went to year-round school. And so I think some of the calendar with that threw us off a little bit. Time-wise, people took their vacations early instead of later because all of the kids started back school, I guess last week. So the beginning of last week. So the end of July.
Interesting. I haven't heard that. Tell me a little bit about yourself. You're a young leader in this industry. You are really up and coming and growing within the dealership specifically. Would love to know about getting into the industry, getting into the business, what it was like, right? Selling cars early on. Just give us your background and your story.
Sure, absolutely. I'm 36. I did not always want to be in the car business. I actually never planned to be in the car business.
Famous last words.
Famous last words, that's right. And then once you're in, it drags you in and you can never get out. So, but I had absolutely no plans of being in the car business. When I got into the car business, I was actually working for a plastic surgeon as his technician. So I got my bachelor's degree in business, and my dad asked me, hey, do you want to come into the dealership? I'd really love to have a family member in the dealership. And I was like, let me think about it.
Do you want to fix noses or do you want to replace engines?
Yeah,
I know which one I'd pick.
That's it. And I was like, let me think about it. I grew up working in the stores all throughout high school, college. During the summers, I would work in the service department as the cashier, or in the accounting department, filing things and helping that way. But I never envisioned myself being here full time. And it has been quite the ride. And, once they say once you get in, you can't get out. And people who get out typically come back because it's just such a different world, and it's so fun, and you literally learn something new every single day, and every day you're like, something changes every day. It's never the same thing every single day.
Yeah, look, but you're also not just in the car business. You're running the store. You're the GM of the store, and so from someone that didn't want to even be in the business, now as you've grown, what has that been like for you? Like, what did you actually start doing early on in the business? What was the first role you took, and how did you scale that?
So when I started in the car business at the dealership, I started in 2013. And my dad did a really good job of having me go through every single department. So he wanted me to learn every single department: parts, service, selling cars, BDC. I've held every single title in the dealership, internet manager. And I really feel like that has helped me a whole lot. I spent a lot of time in service and really, really enjoy service. I know a lot of GMs typically don't have the service background and they're more on the sales background, but he did a really good job of bringing me up and letting me learn the whole house all around. So I spent at least 6 months in every department, or until I hit my objective, and then I moved to a new department. Now I spent more time in service probably than any other department, because we had a Hyundai store and a Kia store. And so I would bounce back and forth between the Hyundai store and the Kia store, depending on the need that we needed at that point in time. In 2018, I got promoted to general manager and was general manager of our Hyundai store, and was at the Hyundai store until 2022, and then took over our Kia store.
Now, can you tell me a little bit about your performance throughout? I know you've also been involved in some turnarounds, and so would love to understand, like, what does that mean to you? What these turnarounds were, like any details there?
Yeah, absolutely. So our Hyundai store, we had two Hyundai stores, and they were about 14 miles apart. And the store that I took over in 2018 was not performing well. And it had not ever performed well. And I was able to, within about 15 months, have that store making a profit every month, and really grew a team and grew the store that had always been the store that struggled. So it was really beautiful to see something that had always struggled turn into something that no longer struggled. You know, that store was really where I spent the majority of my time. And I think getting to know all of those employees and then being able to help them grow and grow alongside them really helped that store.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I do want to understand a little deeper here,
Okay.
but I want to take a quick aside on, you had mentioned before we started recording, your early days with selling cars, and specifically you said, you know, it was you were good at it, and you said that being a woman was actually very advantageous to you. I want to, like, can you tell us more about that? I think many listening can, you know, attest to that. That typically women that are in sales do very well, right? That's a generalization, but I can tell you from my experience, you know, the women I worked with that were in sales did very well, and there's not many of them, but the ones that are there typically perform well. So what's your take on that, right? It seems like you experienced that too, but like, just give us your perspective.
So my perspective on that is women do have the ability to do very, very well in the car business. And I think that, you know, that's not a well-known fact. Like you said, you know, there's not a lot of us that are in the car business that are females, but when someone gets in and they dig their heels in and they're a female, they can really, really succeed. One of my top salespeople here, she sells 18 to 20 cars a month. She's been with me for 6 years, and for customers, I feel like they really like that, because the car business has gotten such a bad stigma for so many years that, you know, we're just here to get over on people, or, you know, whatever their perception is of us. And so I think finding a female in that position has really, you know, helped customers. I know that I have customers reach out to me every week for, you know, advice on vehicles, things like that, you know, what I think would work best for their car seat setup, what I think would work best for the amount of children they have. You know, do they need a minivan? You know, will a midsize SUV work? Things like that, that I feel like there's not, or before the past few years, there haven't been a ton of resources on those types of things. I really also, being younger when I started out, you know, Facebook was really up and coming, and I sold a bunch of cars off of Facebook. Truly, I didn't touch a ton of leads. And so I, generated a lot of my own leads from Facebook, posting pictures of, fresh trades that we got in and things like that, customers coming in and taking a look at them. So I think that, being able to be a female really does give you a different perspective that most people don't look at, especially if you have kids, right? So if I asked you, how many car seats, can I do 3 across in a Telluride? Can you answer me that question?
I'd go right to the car mom. That's my solution.
Right. I love Kelly. I'm a big Kelly follower. So, things like that. And she has really done a fabulous job at that. I've watched her since she had, I think I started following her when she had 1,400 followers on Instagram. And
Oh, wow. You're early.
been,
Early adopter.
yeah, it's been great. She's been such a great resource, and I send people to her constantly. But, things like that, in informing women that they can be successful in this business, right?
This episode is brought to you by Cox Automotive. Omnichannel isn't a buzzword anymore. It's the playbook winning dealers are running. In a world where the buyer journey is more fragmented than ever, the most successful dealers are connecting the dots online, in-store, and everywhere in between. The result? Smoother deals, faster turnarounds, and a serious lift at the bottom line. Nearly 80% of omnichannel dealers are seeing higher close rates, and you can too. One in, the Omnichannel Dealership, a new guide from Cox Automotive, breaks it all down. Click the link in the show notes below to download it now for free.
So if you're a man right now listening, right? You're a GM, a dealer principal, whatever, and you're saying, okay, let's put all the feelings aside for a second. Let's talk business, right? It's the Car Dealership Guy podcast at the end of the day. It sounds like, and I agree, that it's in my financial incentive to have women on my team, right?
Absolutely.
Like, period. Let's put all the ideological stuff, like, it's in my financial incentive. What would you say? Like, what's the best way to attract women to my team, right? Like, as a male, how would you do that? Right? Because I feel like there's just an embedded advantage if you are a woman to attract other women, right? It's like, I am the living proof of what can be done here. And so typically you see, if there's more female leadership, you also see more female team members. Now, the alternative point of view here could just be maybe that they're putting more of an emphasis on it. And I would argue that it's both. But like, how would you attract? How would you show? How would you the experience you're living, right? And you are clearly a big believer in the car business. Like, how do you attract more women into this industry? Ultimately,
I think that it is absolutely in every general manager's best interest to have some female salespeople. And not all females make good salespeople. Some are really good and some of them aren't. I would encourage you to, really see how they would fit on your team and, take a look at your sales team and go, okay, well, do we have someone that caters to all of the different types of people that we will see, and use that as a basis for it.
So you're saying look at it in like a general sense of like, what traits are you missing on your team? Like almost holistically, less so independent. You're saying, does this complement my team? My philosophy is like, I don't care about gender. I could care less about that. But I think that it is an interesting question, right? When you think about overall business and the opportunity there, and then you bring it up, right? You're exhibit A of success in that sense. And so I do think it's an interesting question of, again, going back to your earlier comment, it is possible to run a dealership and be a mom, right? I'm curious, why did you write that? Like, what does that mean to you when you say it's possible to run a dealership? Just tell us a little bit about like your lifestyle and why that came to mind.
I think that a lot of people believe that it's one or the other, right? I can either be a mom to my kids or have my career. I can't have both. And what I wanted people to know is you can do both and you can be good at both, right? Yeah, there's constraints on both ends, right? There's things that you might miss out on because you've got to be at work. Holidays, an example, when your kids are out of school, You got somebody to watch them so you can come to the dealership, things like that. But on the other end, you're able to show your children, what hard work looks like and what putting in all of that time and blood, sweat, and tears, what beautiful comes from that.
Mm-hmm. I do agree with that. I think I know my wife talks a lot about, providing like a example of work ethic to the kids,
Mm-hmm.
and not, from the father and mother perspective. I do think that's really important. Right. Because, at least in my household, right, I'm, they're very like heavy career oriented person, clearly kind of doing what I'm doing. But that is a conversation we've had, right? It's like, to have two daughters, right? And to kind of set that example of, what you can do and what you can be. I think it's really, really important. So didn't expect us to get into this corner of the conversation, but I dig it. You never know when the conversation will take you. So tell me more. So I do want to understand a little bit better about like how you've grown in the dealer group, or at least, if you said from Hyundai to Kia, right? That experience, again, you are the dealer principal's daughter and having come from a different industry, right? What was that experience like for you, right? Did it take you time to earn respect? Like, just give us the behind the scenes of what it was like, right? You did tell us you were in every single department, but just kind of growing through the dealership, like, what was that like for you on a personal level?
I think being a dealer's kid, you absolutely have to earn respect. And I never wanted to be looked at as that, right? I wanted to be looked at just like everybody else. Yeah, my dad owns the dealership, but he expects just as much, if not more, from me than anybody else on the team. And that's really how I wanted to be. I wanted to, I wanted to earn my title and, have respect from my coworkers, my peers, that eventually would be, my team members under me. And that was very important for me. Now, when I first started in the car business, and I was like, it is a change from what I was doing. I was like, he was like, you have to go out here and sell cars. And I was like, I got to sell a car? Okay. I was like, I can't sell a car. I remember looking at him going, I can't sell a car. He goes, sure you can. And I said, are you sure? And he said, can't, never, could do nothing, Lauren. And I said, all right. So I went out there and I sold a car, and it was a Jeep Grand Cherokee. It was white. I will never forget it. And I remember walking out and going, okay, well, I've done all of my Hyundai tests. So like, I know all of my Hyundai information, but gosh, they picked a used car. Okay, I got this. And I remember being so nervous for that first purchase. And then I did it. And after you did it, there's just this fire that is lit under you. And you're like, I can do that again. That was fun, right? And that's what I always tell people whenever I interview them is selling cars is so much fun. And the first time you do it, you're a little nervous because you're worried that you might not have the answer to every single question that the customer is going to ask you. But the biggest thing that I tell them is the most important thing is the sell of yourself, right? So the customer comes into the dealership because they can't go any further, right? Unless they go through Carvana. Okay. But in the state of Mississippi, people don't buy many cars from Carvana. That's just not a big thing down here. So our customers, if you can build rapport with your customer, you've won half the battle, right? Because they want to come into the dealership and just make sure that they are making the right decision. They want to come in and have a good experience and say, okay, this is a place that I want to come back to. These are people who treated me like they would treat their family members. And, seeing customers over the years and in all of the different aspects of the dealership that I've been in, it's been a really cool thing. So, while it was quite the baptism by fire method at the beginning, it was definitely something that I clung to fast. I did have a sales background. I used to sell in college. I sold clothes and things like that on eBay. Actually, I sold a bunch of stuff on eBay before I got into the car business. So I've always had a sales personality. I've always been able to talk to people. I've always liked customers. I have a really good memory. I can remember a customer who bought a car 2 years ago. They'll walk in the dealership. I can call them by name and tell you exactly what they bought. So I have a very, very photographic memory. And I think that that has really helped me and helped the dealership. When salespeople talk about a customer, I know who they're talking about, right? I'm going to remember the conversation we had.
But tell me about, so you clearly had an upbringing on the sales side and variable. You mentioned earlier you're very comfortable with fixed. How did that come to be? Like, how did that happen?
So I was in sales, and then I went to the BDC and became the internet director. And my dad told me, you need to go to service. You're going to service. And I was like, oh, I don't want to go to service.
Good old service.
I don't want to go to service. He said, you're going to service. I said, okay, yes, sir. I'll go to service. So I was a service advisor for probably a year and a half. And then I became the service manager. And I really love service. I really do. And I know that not everybody loves service, but I love the relationship that you get to cultivate with that customer. And it's fun. There's no downtime. You're running around all day long, and it just makes the day go by so fast. I love, getting to see people come back with their vehicles after they bought them. People name their cars. They love their cars, right? And they'll come back and they'll tell me, hey, I still have my Kia Soul and I absolutely love it. Since I've been in service, has always been the department I probably like the most.
Did you ever turn wrenches? I
did not. That is the one thing I did not do. I cannot fix your car, unfortunately. Do have a lot of knowledge about fixing the cars, but you don't want me turning a wrench on your vehicle. Now I can probably work one, no problem. But
and when you say you have lots of knowledge, I mean, did you just get that from being an advisor, or like where did you pick up on the knowledge?
Yeah, being an advisor. Absolutely. That is where I learned all of the knowledge of all of the different, maintenance plans, recommended services, things like that. I also went through NCM school. So my dad is big on training. And so he sent all of us in the dealership to NCM school. So I've been through their GMEP program, as well as every single training that they offer. So I've been through the service classes, the parts classes, and really, really recommend that program to people, because you really learn a lot when you're taken out of the dealership for a week and are able to see the behind the scenes and the numbers and the nuts and bolts of it.
This episode is brought to you by Dealer DMV. Dealers, are you still stuck using outdated interstate titling methods? Dealer 50 from Dealer DMV modernizes the process for you. With 24/7 access to sales tax, title, and registration fees, pre-filled state-specific forms, and seamless DMS integration, their online platform makes out-of-state titling fast, easy, and accurate. Plus, with full-service vendor support, their average time to perfect liens is under 14 days. And exclusively for CDG listeners, get 30 days of free full-service access to Dealer 50 on unlimited out-of-state deals. That's 30 days for free. It's a limited time offer that won't last long. Unlock free full-service deals for a month by visiting dlrdmv.com/CDG and use code POD30 when you submit an interest form. Again, that's dlrdmv.com/CDG and use code POD30 or click the link in the show notes below.
You're on the Mississippi State Dealer Association, if I'm not mistaken, right? On the board.
I am.
Like, can you tell us about that? I mean, how did that come to be? Why did you decide to embark on that journey?
Sure. I've been on the MADA board for 2 years now and absolutely love it. Our MADA board is so important. Our head of the MADA board, Marty Milstead, is a fabulous human being. I can pick up the phone and call him for anything I need at any moment. And they really go to bat for us. So, serving on their board has been very rewarding for me. I've really, really enjoyed it. And getting to see, some of the political stuff that goes on behind the scenes, that I wouldn't have seen otherwise. So that's been really cool.
All right. So what's your advice, Lauren, overall, like, for other women in this industry when you think about advancing in this business, and what advice would you give to anyone listening?
I mean, it's no different than being a male, right? We're all measured by our performance. And so my advice would be, hit your performance metrics.
Perform.
Yeah, perform, hit the numbers. And, at the end of the day, all dealerships, we care about the numbers, right? So that's what we're
It's
measured
a
by.
meritocracy, baby.
That's right. That's it. That's the bread of the bread and the butter.
Well, and what about you personally? Like, what challenges are you facing nowadays? Like, how are you allocating your time? Just give us, a couple things that are really top of mind for you today at the store.
Okay.
I like the smile. That means there's lots to unpack.
Yeah. The day to day here is very busy. So, right now we're still, we just came out a month in close. So, spent some time in accounting today and, going over month in close with them. Held our sales meeting at 8:30 this morning. Every morning we have a sales meeting, save the deal meeting, like I'm sure most dealerships do. My time is allocated to, I have vendor calls every day. Usually I help out in the service department a lot. So, service
With what, like customer issues or just like problem solving?
I would say problem solving. I've really tried to help train them back in the service department. I loved being a service advisor, and being a service advisor, sometimes you're thrown in there, right? No different than on the sales side. If you're busy and you just hired a bunch of people and, right now we just hired a decent amount of green salespeople. And so that right there is taking up some of my time, but it's very important that you really grasp onto these people and show them the ropes and the processes and the procedures. And I tell everybody, we're going to show you the process. And if you'll follow the process, you will be successful. And my dad has cultivated a 10-step plan on the sales side and the service side. Everybody's got the same 10-step plan on the sales side, but on the service side as well. And, just.
What is that, Lauren? What do you mean by 10-step plan?
The 10 steps to the sale on the sales side. I feel like everybody has some variation of.
Oh, got it. Okay. But what about on the service? What about on the service side?
The service side is a little different. So, we want to greet the customer in the service lane. We want to get the hood up on their vehicle, walk around the vehicle, and make sure notate any type of things that we see. We want to state the customer's name, state the item that they're coming in for that day, show them any factory recommended maintenance that they have, tell them we're going to look and make sure they don't have any open recalls that need to be attended to. And then we're going to give them a promise time. We're going to ask them if they would like to be transported somewhere, if they were going to wait on the vehicle. And then the service advisor is going to write up the repair order and dispatch it to the technician. So pretty much the same type of process that I feel like every dealership has. And then after that, we really want an active delivery with the customer. We want to walk the customer to their vehicle instead of just throwing the keys at them. I really don't like when we throw keys at customers. Customers really like for you to have their undivided attention, and I feel like that's very important.
Lauren, what would you say has been like the most meaningful change you've made at the store, right? Like what enhancement, improvement, you bring this like distinct touch. I'm curious what you think is simply, have been one of the most incremental changes you've personally made, changes really. I want to understand, like, if I came to that store, how do I feel your touch that, you've cemented your touch at that store, right?
I'd say the culture. I feel like
I need to know more than that though. What do you mean by the culture?
I know, but I feel like our employees really like to come to work.
Why?
Because we're all a family. And I know that sounds kind of,
So what if you have to fire someone tomorrow? Are they still family?
well, yeah, But I mean, that happens every day. That happens, people.
So you're not a family, you're a team.
We're a team. Yeah. But I feel like, the culture in this store, I feel like that's one thing I've done very well is that the culture in the store, employees really like to be here. I have an open door policy. I had to lock my door for this so that they don't come in here. I'm dead serious. So I have an open door policy. I'm always here. They know they can come to me with anything. They can come to me with, a simple question, something that they're having trouble with, things like that. And I think that is really the monumental change is that having an open door policy as a GM. Yes, I have all of these other things that I have to tend to, but employees knowing that they're valuable and that we care to see them succeed and care to answer their questions and not, get on to them for asking questions, things like that. I feel like has really been a monumental change. I'm not off limits to them, right? Like I don't sit in this.
You're approachable.
I'm approachable and I don't sit in a glass office or, with, no one's going in there kind of thing. I mean, I lock the door and they've come and stood at the door a couple of times. So, I feel like having an open door policy as a GM is really different. I've seen, along the way, GMs that were less approachable. And I think that is something that is very, very important and really can change, the way the dealership is ran. Just knowing your people knowing that you're going to help them and you're here to help them succeed and they're not on their own.
Do you see a world where you'd want to get your kids into the business?
I do.
Wow.
I wish that, I do wish that my oldest son, I have a 14-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 5-month-old baby. So we
wow.
redo button here a lot. I'm tired.
I gotta ask, like, how are you managing with the 5-month-old? I mean, that sounds brutal.
I'm worn out.
Doing what you're doing.
I'm worn out, but it's great. It's fun and life's busy and 3 kids is chaos, no doubt. 2 is way more manageable. You both have 2 hands. You throw in the third one and you're like, I don't have enough hands. So, but I do want my children to one day want to be in the dealership. My oldest, he'll be 14 in November. And next year I'd like for him to start, washing cars, learning how to change oil, things like that. My dad did a very good job of, teaching us a work ethic and having us involved in the dealership when we were teenagers. And I think that while I didn't, come out of college going, I want to go into the car business, I think that, laying that groundwork definitely laid the path for that.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Lauren Wilson Reeves, thanks for coming on the CDG podcast from Wilson Kia. Keep it up, keep pushing. And, I know you have a 5-month-old, so I wish you all the strength in the world. We have 3 under 5, so I know all about, young babies in the household and, lacking sleep, but, stay strong. You got this. So Lauren, thanks for coming on. This was awesome.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Hope you enjoyed that episode. Please give the podcast a rating, consider subscribing to the show, and check the show notes for links to what we talked about. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys next time.